Hello, everybody. What is good? What is good? Juliana Page here, and it is Momentum Monday. And really what Momentum Monday is, I am a big believer in starting anything you do with the most pure energy that you can come up with. To me, that's really getting rid of anything that's not in agreement with God and really starting your week with intention so that you can ride this wave of momentum that you build. Because once you're intentional, once you get a clear picture, you can take these inspired actions throughout the week and it builds really healthy, good, strong momentum. So what I have found is really helpful. I do this a lot over on Instagram at Miss Juliana Page. But what I have found is really helpful is to have a strong message for your week. Okay. So this one is, what is your higher? What is your higher? And what I mean by that is, what is that next level for you? What is that next place of excellence for you? What is that next place that is calling you forth? Like the best part of you. What is that next place of promise? What is that place that just gets you stirred up just thinking about it? Maybe even at times a little intimidated because it's bigger than you, but what is that higher for you? And if you have pen, paper, anything like that, feel free to jot it down. I sometimes use notes on my phone and email it to myself, but what is your higher? Identify that. It's going to be unique and personal to you. It's not going to be anybody else's. It's not going to look like it. It's not going to unfold the exact same way. So what is your higher? Give yourself permission in just a space right now just to write that out. Okay, so here's the thing. This actually came because I was in a group and they were talking a lot about the suddenly, or the God of the suddenly, and suddenlies just in general. And what was really being revealed to me is we love that. We love that. We love a good sermon. We love a good teaching that's telling us like your miracle is coming, your suddenly is here. Like we get amped hearing about that, right? And the interesting thing is I feel like we get so obsessed almost with outcomes, but God is really about the journey and the process and the testing before all of that. And yes, I do believe that there is such a thing as suddenly, but more often than not, I have experienced life-defining moments that have come suddenly, but I've more often than not had a series of suddenlies or a culmination of all of these things starting to come together that I had believed, but it had been after believing for a significant period of time, like years of time, years of testing, years of this stuff. And so God is the God that can do anything God wants, whatever he wants, right? However, I do believe that there's often a series, okay? So with that in mind, I started thinking, well, how can we not live for like a lottery ticket, right? Like, how can we live our life in such a way where we're joyful about the process, where we're really invested in our character and our character development and who we're becoming and how we can really be present and operating with God versus so focused on these outcomes that often don't happen in our timing or the way that we think it's going to play out, right? Because if we really just focus on an outcome, we could really also set ourselves up for a lot of expectation hangovers and disappointment. So I want to talk a little bit about that today, okay? Because a lot of times I've seen in my own life that suddenlies have happened when I didn't know it was going to happen or when I wasn't trying to make it happen, which made it suddenly and which made it exciting. When we are forcing and we're pushing and we're just needing this outcome to happen this way at this time, that's a really rough way to live. And then if it doesn't happen, how do you overcome that, right? Let alone if that happens more than once. So my invitation, my thought for you on today would be, how can you position yourself for a lifestyle of process, understanding that God is always testing us to promote us, not testing us to punish us, but testing us to promote us. God wants to bring us from strength to strength and from glory to glory, right? But there's a partnering that's happening there, and you can't really recognize that without relationship. So to step into a real season of these suddenlies and just redemption there's a lot of passing tests. And as you pass tests, that's almost how you build this momentum and how things are accelerated so quickly, it seems. And what are some of the tests, for example? It's, again, so unique and personal to each person, and there's so many, so I can't say these are what happened in this time frame, but examples are testing your motives, testing your perseverance, testing your will, testing your belief, testing your faith, testing your character, right? Just testing who you are and what you stand for, right? Just deep at your core. And if we don't, I found in my own life story, if we don't pass these tests, if I haven't passed the test, it's because there's been some sort of heart wound that hasn't been healed, or it's because I'm lacking some sort of wisdom in some kind of way. So that could have been in the realm of business when I launched my very first business and had absolutely no idea what I was doing and never seen anyone do that before. Or maybe even not using discernment or going into relationships when God never assigned those, right? And there was a lot of painful lessons learned that way. So we typically, as I mentioned, don't know when it suddenly is coming. So it's important to really embrace process and feed on testimonies of how people have already done what it is that you desire or aspiring for, because a lot of times that stirs up our faith too. Just how people have had breakthrough in a specific area where you want breakthrough, whether that's in relationship, whether that's with business, whether that's with family, whether that's with a prodigal of some kind, whether that's in finances, whatever it might be. Hearing testimonies of how God has been showing up is so, so good. So doing life in community where you're exposed to that, really important. But then just cultivating a lifestyle of daily obedience. Daily obedience, because this is just basically saying that you're faithful and that you're trustworthy, right? And so if God popped up suddenly, you'd be like, okay, like I can handle this, right? So another way to say this is I have hope and I get excited about suddenlies just like the next person. However, I think for me to really maintain balance and the right perspective and really operate from humility and wisdom and just obedience is really just embracing a daily process so that I'm not gripping outcomes. I was a former high achiever, but what if God wasn't leading any of that? I am just in such a place where unless God is building it, I really don't want to, because it's going to be for naught in a lot of ways, right? Okay, and then another thing to highlight is I feel like it's often when we are in crisis or our life is in crisis in some kind of way where we crave messages about the suddenly, or we crave messages about miracles. We just want God to come in and like bloop, pick us up and like put us somewhere else. We want that. We want to skip process. We just want the miracle. We just want the lesson. We just want to be on the other side. And here's what I know. When your life is in crisis, it is very, very unlikely that you will embrace process, okay? And so that's when we start pursuing things like quick fixes, or we just really have this mindset of desperation, and we are vulnerable to doing basically whatever comes our way, okay? And that is not good. I don't believe anything good comes out of desperation because you're not trusting. That's fear-based. And there's going to be a consequence of making a decision from there. So all that to say, if you are somebody desiring suddenly a miracle, God to show up a greater way in your life, one of the things that I found that is really helpful if your life is also in crisis is to build stability and security in your life. If that is returning to, you know, a place of promise or a place where you had favor in your life and working at a job, let's say, that you thought it was right to leave, but you really left too early, maybe that is something to do. Or maybe you step out, and I know that I've done this. I stepped out and I started from the bottom and worked my way up in a corporate position that I wasn't even qualified for, but I was willing to start from the bottom and to start over. And this was after I had been running my own business. So going from running your own business and having your own hours and being successful to then going to this place where you're working crazy hours. I was working like 4:30 to 1 in the morning. You're not being paid to what you're accustomed to. And it's just not a task or a role that you saw yourself doing. I didn't see myself, I consider myself at this time more introverted, and I was training and doing lots of things that really brought me out of my shell and felt really uncomfortable majority of the time. So to do that, I wasn't above or beneath that, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get my life to a place of stability and to just build integrity and to just stay humble and to just trust. So for what that's worth, if your life is in crisis yet you want to suddenly, do what you can now to have a stable life. And if you're not sure, when did you last have that in your life? And just pick up where you left off. So, you know, sometimes we can learn a lot of lessons in situations where they're not ideal. Okay. But often we decide that we're going to run from those too, which isn't always the best. So God often, I've seen this happen in my life, will bring you back to that place that you ran from and help you learn the lesson, but this time with him. So I just invite you to think about that. Where can you build integrity? Where can you pull back from pursuing fantasies like we all can do and just do the daily steps of obedience that bring this level of just peace and stability back to your life? How can you do that so then you can really embrace a process of going to your higher? Okay. So summary for that, suddenlies work best in the context of a process in a life that works. All right. Suddenlies work best in the context of a process in a life that works. So what is the process to really build integrity in your life and to really get your life working again? When was the last time that you knew that your life was working and you felt really good? Get back to that place and then build on that, but this time with God. Okay, so back to this. Really, when it comes to this path of your higher, it's walking the path that God has for you. That's why I think that testimonies are great. However, it is really important to be able to lean in and to build a relationship with God and hear his voice for yourself and let him guide and establish your steps, because it's almost like the faith walk is having a little bit of light in front of you and taking the next step. So with a cell phone, now that we have flashlights on them, right? If you were to just picture your house at night, let's say you have to get up and go to the bathroom and it's across your house, right? So you get there probably by the flashlight in your phone and you can't see all the way straight to that bathroom even, but you can see where your next steps are so you don't run into furniture, stub your toe or anything like that. And the faith walk is often like that. You have a little bit of light, but you just keep following the light and God will keep giving you your next steps. Sometimes he gives you glimpses of the vastness of what he's up to, but he does his greatest work when it seems dark and when it seems like you have no idea what's going on. And he still gives you each step for you to take. All right. So here are some ways that you can apply practical wisdom to your life when it comes to a series of suddenlies, when it comes to preparing yourself to really live a lifestyle of God just doing suddenlies all the time, right? One, I would say, is visualization. What is this dream that God has put in your heart? This thing that you know that is yours. Like it comes to you as simple as breathing does. Like you just know that you're wired for this. Like you know that you've been put on earth for this thing. Like what is this flame that God has put in you? Because that's what you fan. That's what you continue to cultivate. That's what you continue to learn about, that you grow, that you build. But you start by seeing it, right? Habakkuk will tell us to write the vision and make it plain, but it's so good to be visualizing it, closing your eyes and visualizing yourself in it. Successful. Like, what does that look like, right? Because a lot of times we get what we focus on. So if you're not visualizing what it is that you want, you're probably getting more of what you don't want because that's what you're focusing on. So having daily visualization where you can have music on in the background, maybe you set a timer on your phone, you plug it into your schedule just like you would any other important meeting, because vision is what you're pursuing. So it's really, really important to make time for that. The next thing, which might surprise you, is forgiveness. Forgiveness. What it does, forgiveness literally like rips weight off of you. All of this weight, all of this baggage that you've been carrying, It literally lifts that off of you. Forgiveness is for you. It's not because somebody asked you to forgive them. It's literally for you. It's you releasing the weight of punishing that person, of being offended, of bitterness, of anger, of all of that, releasing that poison from yourself that would literally destroy you if you continue to cling on to that, and just letting that person go. A lot of times you can do that through understanding, healthy confrontation, writing a letter maybe that never gets sent to a person, or particularly if this person is no longer living, letters are very helpful to process and to just release and to forgive. But once you forgive, you can really release yourself probably of the fuel that you've been using in your life to drive you. So for example, I've got a couple of examples. So I really had to forgive my different sets of parents. So I have birth parents, I have adopted parents, I have step parents, lots of parents, right? And so there was many roles and nobody really showed up in my life as a parent and as somebody that was present and involved and poured life into me, or was somebody that I could call for help and just wisdom. I really had to navigate on my own. And I think that as I matured into adulthood, that became really frustrating because it just brings up thoughts of, well, why not? Like, well, why weren't you there? Well, why didn't you show up? Or why didn't you protect me? Or why didn't you care? Or why was that not important to you? Or why did you prioritize that over this? Or why was that so easy for you to do that? Like, those questions can come up. And as a kid, you don't really know how to process it. You just know there's abandonment, you know there's neglect, you know there's dysfunction, you know there's things going on, but you don't have a vocabulary for it. You don't know what to do with it. And so all of that sort of lack and dysfunction and scarcity and fear for me really created a lot of interesting motives. Like I really wanted to be a high achiever to prove that I could do it without help, or to really be successful so that I could prove that there's a better way than what's happening around me, or to be the one that had it all together because clearly nobody around here did, right? So there was these thoughts that came and that was driving me, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know where that came from. But as I matured and as I did my own homework, like I decided that I wasn't going to be somebody that was just going to project my stuff onto somebody else and have them have to process all through that and then start building foundation. I wanted to be somebody that was able to pour in and really be present and involved, whether that was having kids or being a spiritual mom or whatever it happened to be, just being a good human in the world. I didn't want to project my stuff onto people. So I really had to figure that out. But where I found the most power was in forgiveness, because then what happened is forgiveness came in, and I would say it was almost like a vacuum. Like it ripped out all of this stuff that was too heavy for me to carry, and all of these thoughts that are really lies and they're illogical. Because if you get things down to their bare bones, really every person in your life is doing the best they can with what they have. So maybe they didn't have good examples, or maybe they never learned how to communicate, or maybe they never went to therapy, or maybe they never had a counselor, or maybe they never had a mentor or a coach, or maybe all they knew how to do was to work, or they never had a healthy way to deal with trouble. So they went into drugs and alcohol, or, you know, nobody had a legacy of faith. So they didn't know how to build that and to trust God and to see what I'm saying? So when you see and understand where people come from, then it's easier to release it and to forgive it. And so as I was gradually able to do that, I started to have a clear space inside of me. So whereas before all my fuel was this like, ugh, like I'll show you, right? But now if that's gone, what is my motive, right? Like, how do I create from a really healthy place? That's new. That's really interesting. How do I do that? And so really learning how to think with the mind of Christ, or have a pure heart and operate from that, right? Like knowing that you're whole and you have a healed heart, you show up totally different in the world, right? Or really being able to manage your emotions well, right? and just being patient does wonders, right? Just so many things. How to really just process differently from this place of I am whole, I am loved, I am valuable, I am chosen, I am gifted. This is the right path, right? Like all of that will cause you to show up and operate differently. But that is something that happens from within. But it's wild what happens when you are fueled by something positive versus all that negative stuff. So that would be the next thing, is break patterns. So 1 was visualization, 2 is forgiveness. The next one is break patterns. And you break patterns by, in my case, it was learning in reverse, what I'll call it, but it was doing the opposite thing. So I didn't want to be an addict of some kind or really get involved in drugs and alcohol because I'd seen that movie before, right? Or I didn't want to just become a workaholic because I'd seen that before too. I didn't want to be any kind of a holic, right? Or I really wanted to learn healthy habits. So you break patterns by throwing yourself at the very thing it is that you want to learn. How do you be positive? How do you keep a good attitude? How do you stand firm? How do you develop your character? How do you communicate? How do you express yourself? How do you understand your personality? How do you understand how you're wired, right? How do you understand God and God's voice and God's love, right? Like, how do you recognize all these things? And that is a process, and that doesn't happen overnight. And so breaking patterns is a really, really powerful thing. And I say I learn in reverse because I was learning the opposite things of what was around me. So if it's negative, you usually do the opposite of it, right? But it works because rather than fear, what would faith do here? And so I started just doing the opposite of what I was accustomed to or what felt comfortable because it's what I was groomed in, right? But really what you do is you get to worthy. Whatever you do, you get to worthy. Know that everything else is a lie, right? So any fear, any doubt, any insecurity, any discomfort that's coming up is usually highlighting a lie. And once you align with truth, then you can take the action. So get to worthy is what I would say as far as breaking patterns. And how you do that is really by building a way to whatever your high performance habits are, but building simple habits into your day. I have a daily 5. It depends on whatever it is for you. Maybe it's 3 things, but really building things to help encourage yourself, because the way the world is set up, negativity is going to find you. And if you don't have a practice to encourage yourself, it will stick to your person. And that's often, on some days, really hard to shake. So it's really, really important that you always have a practice to be countering all the stuff you get hit with every day. So I hope this brings some context to the suddenlies. I think that there are these defining moments in our life, but they come from living a life of wisdom and practical wisdom and walking that out and understanding what that feels like and what the rhythm of that is, or having this lifestyle of just enjoying the process and leaning into the process and delighting yourself in the Lord and letting God work with you every day to create, so that when a suddenly happens, you're prepared for it. Because the worst thing is for a suddenly to come to you because you are focused on what your higher is, but you're not ready. And your life has no way to contain what's about to hit it, right? Like that's not a fun place to be. And then you're scrambling, you feel like an imposter, and it's really hard to build that way. Because when your life is in crisis, how many of you know all you're doing is putting out fires? Right? How do you lean in to this sudden, wonderful new thing when you still got hangups and habits that aren't working and just ways of processing that are not healthy? So I believe and I hope for, and I love some suddenlies, okay? And they do happen to me, in my experience, in a series. And then there are these defining moments too, but these are usually moments of decision. And so I find what's valuable is really cultivating a lifestyle that helps you make wise decisions every day, that helps you feel strong and centered and present every day and align with God every day, or that help you feel optimistic and like you are motivated from within, from the right things, right? So that you're not easily shaken by whatever's going to come at you every day, but you can influence what's out there. So I hope this message blessed you as you think about what your higher is. This is what I'll leave you with. Write down what that is and start visualizing it every day. forgive or repent and just clear whatever might be blocking that, and maybe release some things, people, situations from your life that aren't going to be a value add to what's next. And really start breaking patterns by encouraging yourself and building really great habits that will allow you to have this really great capacity to step into fully that place that God is leading you to, that is the place that's only for you, right? What's yours is yours. So my encouragement would be to go all in with that and to not hold back, right? And to really understand that higher place will require all of you. It's not just a fantasy. It will require all of you. There's character to stand firm in that higher place. There's leadership. There's a certain relationship with God. There's just so much faith and belief and decision making that's responsibility, really, that's going to be required of you. So I'm really just wanting to distinguish the difference between getting a winning lottery ticket and really having a lifestyle of favor. With me? All right, guys, hopefully this message blessed you. If you are looking for more information like this, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. I also have a podcast every Saturday. It's Spirit-Filled Real Talk with Juliana. You can find that on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app, I believe also on Amazon. And then there's a lot of great resources over on julianapage.com. There's a self-mastery course, there's coaching packages, and a lot of great books and tools to help you really do this inner work.